Alright, on this side, this setup on this side is a little bit different. This bearing on the here just kind of sits in here, but it's not held captive from going in or out. I guess because it's being held captive on the one end. So, should be able to get this to go on. Trick here is going to get the gotta get this lined up so the bearing is going in where it needs to go at the same time as these pins. I would say, hindsight being 20/20, that if you're doing this, you probably want to put this end on first while that end's not being held captive. That way you can have this lead screw out far enough to get the bearing to go in first, and then just rotate it and slowly guide it in. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's doable this way, it's just probably easier the other way. There it goes. There we go. Right hand side, hardware. I'm going to treat this the same way as the other side, where I'm only going to put 2 screws in this bracket to start. So I've got this little sleeve right here. That's basically like that long sleeve on the other side. That's going to go on the very end here and make it easier for that handle to freewheel. So really the only question is mystery bushing. Oh no, wait a minute. Got another one of these. I got this long sleeve. That long sleeve is not going to go on there unless I take the Woodruff key out. This is mystery bushing. This is the mystery bushing. Alright, so I got a feeling that I had this Woodruff key out on this side, and then I just put it back in to keep it from getting lost. Because none of this hardware is going past that, well, except for this. If this goes in here, it really doesn't do anything. That sits on there. Sits in bed on there. Well, I might have to go and look at my video on this. I was hoping I could do it without doing that, because I haven't edited that video, so that's just like a whole bunch of clips of video in a folder that I got to hunt for. I mean, these threaded holes are what the auto feed mechanism, the power feed mechanism actually attaches to. Might have to come back to this tonight. By the time I find these video clips, figure out what I'm doing, it's going to be time for me to go pick up the kitties. Oh. It was really helpful that I videoed all of that disassembly, because I was able to determine the order of reassembly. And yes, I did definitely take this Woodruff key out. Yeah, I had about as much trouble taking it out last time. The short sleeve goes on first, right up against the bearing, and then the actually this cover can go on. Looking all around for the cover, I put it down up on top of the head over here. Alright, so the cover goes on. And the cover is held on by these 3 short screws. Wrote myself a little cheat sheet. Alright, the short sleeve. Then that little bushing. Right there, that little bushing. So that little bushing actually sits right on here and back of the drive unit. Now on the front of the drive unit there's another bushing in the drive unit itself, and then on the front of the drive unit there was a stack of shims. So if you took those off in disassembly of your mill, you definitely want to make sure you kept those all together. I never took them apart, kept them all together on this unit just because I didn't want to run into a problem. The 4 long screws bolt this unit in place. Now this long sleeve goes on. Nope, my mistake. The woodruff key has to go on. Now with the woodruff key on, now the hand wheel. And this sleeve actually sits in here and the hand wheel runs on it. But I definitely want to lube that up with grease. I gotta grab some grease. Dummy! Like, oh, what's that, what's the purpose of the keyway? Forgot to put the dial assembly back on. That's what the woodruff key's for. There's quite a bit of lube inside this, should grab gloves again, but inside this gear drive. Now, this handle goes on. Sleeve. Almost forgot it. Handle. Or hand wheel, to be more correct. To be more exact. To be more accurate. Speech issues tonight. Now, the one thing I did have completely wrong was the location of this brass bushing. Turns out this goes out on the end of the wheel here. And probably wouldn't hurt for that to, because it doesn't get, you know. Hello. That is neither this size nor this size. I want one so we get it. Next side down from this. It's this one. Okay. Now with that bushing in the position that it's in right now, this wheel does not unlock. That's wrong. That's wrong. I could have sworn when I took this apart, that I saw myself in the video taking this apart, that I had that bushing there. That bushing there, I got 2 problems. Problem number 1, this doesn't click out to unlock this wheel. Problem number 2, I can't turn this right here to unlock that collar. Alright, let's try that again. Hey, you know what though? It doesn't look like that's going to be an option no matter what. if I take that spacer off, I just put this on like this, that unlocks the wheel. Still can't turn this. That would be rusted. Well, the other night when the camera battery died, I ended up working on this a little bit longer, and I got this all back together and went together pretty smoothly. At first I was getting kind of like a little bit of a strange noise out of the gear train on that side, but I had realized that there was a small space here, and that when I would travel the table in one direction, that space would close up and it would quiet down, and then when I went in the other direction it would open back up. And what that was actually a problem where the actual lead screw was coming in and out of the bearing on this other side because of that spanner nut not being tight enough. I'm going to finish addressing that in a moment, but for the time being I just want to demonstrate that this is working correctly. There's a toggle switch on the bottom here, and you have to turn that on and this light comes on, and that tells me that there's power to the unit. And then there's a knob right here which is to adjust the speed of the feed, and I'm not sure what these numbers mean exactly. It's 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. I don't know if that's inches per minute or what that might be. And then there's a button on the top here that says rapid. So the way this works is right now in the middle position, this knob in the middle position is like a neutral. Flip it over that way, and so I'm feeding in this direction. And if while it's feeding I push this button, that engages the rapid. Back the other way. And then I can actually turn this down to really low. I don't know if you can see that it's moving really slowly. Or all the way up to high. And it appears that this is probably a potentiometer inside there, a variable resistor that is what's changing the speed of the motor. And I think what they're doing here is that this rapid button probably just shorts out that potentiometer. So because I noticed that when I put this up to the max level, the button makes no difference. So basically pressing the button mimics this being set to max. But the table seems to be moving rather smoothly, so happy to report that that seems okay. And then the other thing was I went back and I checked the play on the table again, and I'm still at 1,500 there. But I notice when I run the table all the way down to the other end or the other, forget which way, but let me get it over. Gotta be careful because I don't have the limit switch on here yet. This is the limit switch. Essentially what this is there's two plungers, and this gets bolted on over here on the front of the table, and then there are two stops that slide in this groove and can be adjusted. And what you can do is you can adjust it so that you could set the feed and walk away from the machine theoretically, and then when it got to the point where you had the stop set, it would push one of those plungers and actually stop the feed automatically. So since I don't have it on there, I don't want to run it right up against the stop because that could damage something. At the very least it'll blow a fuse in here. The guys who were showing me the mill when I was buying it, they weren't the ones who normally operated it. And they commented to me that they noticed that it kept blowing a fuse here. And what I noticed was that one of the two stops was not in the proper position at all. So what was happening was if they would run it all the way to the end, it would stop and the motor would still continue to try and turn, and that would draw excess current through the fuse and pop the fuse. So there's actually nothing wrong with this feed unit. Alright, so I've got this all the way over to the left. And you know what, let me get a, it's driving me crazy that this thing's still rocking. And I can actually see the space in the front here, so let me get a shim. I plan to get a metal shim, the type that is normally used for leveling this type of equipment. But I don't have any of those right now, so I'm just going to use one of these composite shims that I have. These are actually used for in construction when you're putting in like a door frame or a window frame and you need to shim the jamb. These are what are, well, typically you use wood shakes, but they came out with these composite shims because they don't shrink or swell with moisture change, and they also tend to not want to split, so they're actually kind of handy. But I think they compress probably too much to actually be used for this job. But for the time being, in absence of anything else, I'm going to use one of these for this. Just tap that in at the corner. Yeah, that did the job. Okay, so resetting this dial indicator. Yeah, 1.5 thousandth right there. That looks good. So I'm going to run the table down the other end. Doesn't sound like it's binding at any point, so that's another good sign. Picked up speed there a little bit. Alright, so that's roughly the middle right there. Well, not quite. Well, we'll call that the middle. Again, still 1.5 thousandth. And we'll check it at this end. That's like not moving at all there. But that's because the table's extended that way. So really what I want to do is I want to move my dial indicator setup to the other side and check it. Alright, so I've repositioned the dial indicator down this end of the saddle, and if I can get in here, not much room between the between my bench grinder, or pedestal grinder I should say. And you can see that's about 1 thousandth, or just about 1.5 thousandths. So I'm getting about 1.5 thousandth the length of the table, which is good, and I'm satisfied with that. Okay, so here's my dial indicator on there. Whoops. Shoot. Now before I move on to adjusting the knee gib, I've got one more test to do on the table. And this is again right out of the manual, the Wells Index manual. What I've got is I've got my dial indicator set up so that it's I got the base mounted on the side of the head, which is a fixed rigid point, and then I've got the indicator actually right on top of the edge of the table. Actually, I just went too far. Let me bring that over just a little bit. Okay, so bring the table up just a hair. I'm going to zero the indicator. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the table over to the left, and we're going to watch the indicator, and we're going to see how far out that reading goes from 0. And what I would expect is I would expect it to begin to rise or drop as it reaches near the center, and then as it gets past the center point it should go back towards the direction of 0. That would be the normal expected reading for a table with some wear. Now as long as that overall number, the max, doesn't go above the tolerance, which I had committed to memory, but I no longer have it committed to memory. Well, anyways, let's take a look and see what happens. Of course, the needle may jump around a little bit if there's some imperfections in the table that it hits. some nicks or anything like that. I tried to pick a, I didn't want to do it on this area here near the holes that were drilled in this thing. So I don't know if you can see that. We're at about 1,000th right there. Again, the needle's kind of bouncing around because of the roughness of the table. And we're still at 1,500. Speed this up a little bit. That is 2,000. 2.5. 3. We're approaching the center point of the table now. Just going to stop it there so it stops bouncing so I can read the needle. 4,000ths. Looks like we're maxing out at 4. Jumped up to 5 for a second. That was just an imperfection in the table. Alright. We're past the halfway point. And it's just starting to drop now. 3.5. Kind of holding at 3.5. Alright, I'm going to stop it there because I'm almost at the I'm almost at the end of travel here. I'm actually gone a little far. I'm lucky I stopped it when I did. It's 3.5 thousandths. I'm thinking maybe I should have had the indicator. I'm thinking I did this wrong. I'm thinking I should have had the indicator here in the midpoint of the table. So let me reset that.